Chapter 63 Carousel definitely had a sense of humor. I could appreciate that, but in the end, the joke was always on us. My feet were wet. I must have left a puddle on the floor from some shower I had hypothetically taken earlier. The water had spread like long, thin fingers as it dribbled across the bathroom floor. I tried to avoid the little puddles of water as I walked across the room. The mirror was cleaner than I remembered. There had been little spots of toothpaste from where I had brushed my teeth earlier, and the springy bristles launched spittle all around. Carousel had cleaned it off. Did that mean an NPC had come in here expressly to wipe it down, or did Carousel actually use its vast magical powers for that one? On either side of the mirror were windows. Beyond them were darkness and shifting shadows from the forest. The phone was resting on the countertop next to the sink. Kimberly was still on the other line in case I needed her insights. I turned on the water and splashed it on my face. I tried to keep my eyes on the mirror as much as I could without looking like Patrick Bateman. Deep breaths. In and out. I wished the enemy would just appear soon. The waiting was killing me. To be fair, he might also kill me. I had to play my part. I was shaving in the middle of the night. How was I supposed to act it out? I was a hotshot director now. How would I tell an actor to do it? Step 1, feel the scraggly hairs on your face. Step 2, look in the mirror. Look at the left side of your face, right side of your face. Step 3, shake your head. It's no good. This hair has to go. Step 4, shave. It felt like something right out of a commercial. The shaving cream was some kind of designer brand. I didn't even know there was fancy shaving cream, but as I lathered the cream in the canister against its metal lid with the little brush that was next to it, I found myself with a plethora of perfumed wisps that I painted my silly little goatee with. And then it was time to cut it off. The silver razor was high quality and expensive looking, but it was also deadly sharp. I had never used a long razor before. I always bought those little plastic shavers from the store. Even in Carousel, I used the cheap options out of habit. I opened the blade. I swore I could hear ringing in the air, like the sound swords make in samurai movies. As I studied the blade, I saw him in the corner of my eye, standing at the edge of the forest. My hands were shaking. Him. The man of the hour. The undead, hulking figure straight out of a nightmare. He was tall. I knew that from the POV-cam, but even from up on the second story, he looked giant next to a little ornamental tree that was in my character's backyard. It was like how Ramona had described. He was covered in twisted, rusted metal. Of course, it wasn't enough to hinder his movement, but it singed the clothing he wore and gave him the look of a man who had just survived a nuclear meltdown. Except he surely was not alive. Part of his face had melted away. Even by the moonlight, it was gruesome. I could see his metal-covered teeth through a hole where his cheek used to be. When did he get the metal augmentations? Was it from when the Geist factory burned down around him? Or had he gotten this from the supposed accident that took his life? It didn't matter. I looked at his tropes on the red wallpaper. Gale Zaragoza. Is. The die-cast Spirit of Vengeance plot armor, 32. Line of underscores. Tropes. Quick between sets. When moving off-screen from one shooting location to the next, this enemy's hustle will double. No neighborhood watch. The villain will not be seen by NPC witnesses when off-screen. Anyone can die. This enemy operates under a chilling rule: no character is safe. Whether it's because this film is a rule-breaking reboot or a narrative without a true protagonist, this enemy can target or kill any character without ceremony or hesitation. Checking it twice. This enemy has a set of tasks they must accomplish. They will be buffed in all relevant stats when trying to complete them. Self-sharpener. Any weapon that could conceivably be described as bladed will be unrealistically sharp based on the enemy's metal. Genie out of the bottle. This enemy has been set free. The longer they are free, the more powerful and or free-willed they will become. Not yours to control. Characters who encounter this being's power will misunderstand it in their attempts to harness it, to disastrous ends. Huge special effects budget. All of this enemy's actions are larger, more destructive, and more cinematic than makes sense in universe because the director loves a spectacle. Adaptable lore. This enemy's abilities adapt to the story they are in and are liable to change from film to film. Enemy puff. At all times this enemy is stalking prey. Players who are not targeted would be able to see its puff on the red wallpaper. Can cause incapacitation from fear. He always comes back. This enemy can be killed. For a while. Dark aura. This being has an aura with wide-ranging effects, from fear to some combination of status ailments. Bypasses stats on first exposure. Just your luck. This enemy does not have to kill players directly. It can cause bad luck with a curse or similar power that leaves players dead by a bad roll of the dice. Just as I feared. He had the ability to cause bad luck. The puff view of him walking through the factory had been enough to make that assumption. His gesture luck drop was a worst-case scenario. Normally, I wouldn't expect Carousel to accept an indirect kill. It was a rare type of kill in a horror film. It wasn't personal enough most of the time. The diecast had no such limitation. I could die from any old accident right now. Oh. There was wet bathroom tile behind me. I had dragged the phone cord through it. The phone didn't draw enough power to kill me, did it? Or would it matter? The die-cast trope seemed to imply a sparkly electrocution might be exactly what the director ordered. My hand trembled. I had to keep moving. If I let it be shown that I saw him, my only protection from him might be blown. He had the anyone can die trope that the Mercer poltergeist had. I had briefly determined that oblivious bystander worked against that trope, as Ob didn't actually prevent me from being targeted. It just delayed the dastardly deed. The silver blade was so sharp. I touched the blade to my skin. One bump, one slip, and this blade would conveniently find its way into my jugular. Why had I done this? So I could see his tropes? I hoped it was worth it. I needed to calm my hands. I put the razor down on the counter and closed it. I wasn't risking it. I didn't care if I lost all of the performance points in the world. Knowing a bad luck tornado was outside my window, I couldn't force myself to shave with that death trap of a razor without any practice. I preferred my deaths to be violent, not accidental, thanks. Why did I buy this thing? I said. I must have been nuts. I walked calmly back toward the shelving unit and opened it. A pack of disposable razors was sitting on a shelf at eye level. How convenient. There we go, I said. Play it for comedy, play it for comedy. I took a razor out of the pack, 5 for 79 cents, and went back to the mirror. I shaved off my ratty little goatee quickly. A few splashes of water later and a wipe down with a towel, I was good to go. Off screen. As soon as I opened my eyes after wiping off my face, a screen appeared on the red wallpaper. It was a pop from the diecast. He was walking away. Thank goodness. I told Kimberly what had happened to bid her good night. I lived to die another day, or maybe later that day, whichever came first. _. Riley? Ramona called from downstairs. Are you okay? I asked promptly. I walked over to the staircase and peered down it. She was crying. There was this feeling that I can't describe, she said. I remember that feeling. Maybe it was a nightmare. I walked down the stairs. No, I said. The diecast was outside earlier. You felt its aura. It was here? She asked. Yes, I said. It's gone now. You okay? She nodded. I didn't know how much comforting was normal. I decided to go to the kitchen instead. I had stolen an entire sub sandwich from craft services. It was one of those multiple-foot-long sandwiches. I had been eating on it for days. When I opened the fridge, it was gone. The time skip. I hadn't been around for a week because Carlisle Geist was on vacation. The sandwich was gone and replaced by a rotisserie chicken on a plate with aluminum foil over it. I hadn't put it there. While I pondered if it was safe to eat, I noticed that Ramona was still standing by. You okay? I asked again. She nodded. Something you want to talk about? She hesitated for a moment. "Why am I doing this?" she asked. "I thought I was saving Phoebe, but what do we do after? If Carousel is what you say, why bother? If this place is really hell, how is death worse?" Those were the types of thoughts I liked to push out of my head. I needed her to keep her head straight. The fact was I had been plagued by similar questions for months. Anna and Camden had been killed, but they hadn't been attacked by ghosts or mutated frogs. They hadn't been subjected to the uncomfortable strangeness of an awakened Carousel that made the off-putting ambience of Camp Dyer look cheery. They could be done. Why rescue anyone if it only means more of this? "I don't know," I said. "I guess I have to believe that there is something after. Something worth being alive for. You want your sister around for that, don't you?" She didn't answer at first. "I think I want to save her because it's my fault she died." She wanted to leave Lillian Geist and escape. If I hadn't forced her to stay, I don't know where she would be. Silas Dearcon had explained to her how they hadn't planned to kill her sister when making the Throline or whatever. "You can take anything that man told you and throw it out," I said. "The only reason he would tell you that is to manipulate you. If you feel guilty, he can trick you into helping him. It's that simple." "I think it was my fault, too," she said. "It doesn't matter what he said. I was there. Everyone else who ran lived. I didn't even know if her sister was really dead. From the sound of her story, her sister could very well have been an NPC. For all I knew, Phoebe Mercer had been the NPC who wiped the spittle off my mirror so it would be clean for my scene earlier. How could I say that to Ramona, though? She had not fully pieced together that Phoebe was likely connected to the script or understood the implications of it. "I'm sorry. I can understand how you want to save her. I guess what you can tell yourself is that it's her choice of whether to be a part of this world. You can't choose for her. Give her the chance to live, and then let her decide whether it's worth it." She had transferred to a little chair in a nook near the dining room while we talked. I followed her, leaving the rotisserie chicken behind. It started to rain. We sat and watched the drops flow over the giant windows of the dumb modernist house my character called home. "I know your friends are dead," she said. "Why do you want to rescue them?" "They are my oldest friends," I said. "For a long time, my only friends. I was never good at talking about it." "Is it your fault they died?" she asked. "Wait, I'm sorry. That didn't come out how I meant for it to." I didn't mind her asking. It was clearly a subject she had been thinking about for a long time. "Not them, no," I said. I laid down on a long bench that was like a Victorian fainting couch but way too long. We talked for hours until we fell asleep. The needle on the plot cycle ticked so close to first blood that I expected someone to die any minute, but when I woke up the next morning, it still hadn't come. Chapter 64. I got dressed for my last day as a director. Because this would surely be my last day. First blood was upon us. It was so close I could feel it in my skin like static electricity. With this enemy, death could come from anywhere. All I could think about was the person who I knew was going to die today, Carlisle Geist. I felt so ashamed of my role in his death. I was also embarrassed by how much dread I had. I needed to be stronger than this. Carlisle was as much a victim as me or anyone else. He might have been even more victimized in a way. At least I stood a fighting chance. I wasn't kept in the dark. Not completely, at least. Carlisle's death was a plot device, not even a proper plot beat, despite him likely serving as first blood or something close to it. As I picked out the best clothes I could from my character's closet, I was left with a question I hated to ask: did Carlisle have to die? I wanted to be able to swallow my concerns and just move forward. My head told me we couldn't save him. If Carlisle didn't die, then there would be no party held in his honor at the Geist Manor. No party meant no fire. If the manor blaze was necessary, then so was Carlisle's death. And yet, I felt some part of myself mourning the man. It wasn't out of raw loneliness in the way I mourned Anna and Camden. It was a soft, tender pain. I liked Carlisle as a friend, and he seemed to like me. He reminded me of my grandfather. We shared a passion for filmmaking. I didn't even register I had a passion in filmmaking. I thought it was a hobby or an interest, but as I directed my first feature film, I realized it was more than that. I felt guilt, knowing that if his death were necessary, I would allow it. More than that, I would make sure it happened. I could put my emotions in my back pocket better than anyone. If he had to die, he would. "Are you sure about this?" Ramona asked as she rode in my passenger seat on the way to the film lot. "Yes," I said. "I just don't know if I can willingly stand there while that thing kills people," she said. I had thought about this for weeks. I didn't know what Ramona was. I had nothing but educated guesses that all led to different answers. Calling her an NPC would be accurate in one way but felt wrong in another. Assuming she really did have free will, the fact that she was born in Carousel meant nothing. She was clearly something more. Even Silas Dearcon treated her differently. She almost seemed like a player. She talked like a normal person caught in a terrible situation, almost like the Geists, but unlike the Geists, she appeared to have a player poster frame on the red wallpaper. Even without an archetype, she might still have been a player as far as Carousel was concerned. To me, that explains how she was being treated in this story. I knew that roles in storylines were assigned based on archetypes more than anything else. The fact that Carousel had not stuck her in a role might simply be caused by her not having one. The way she described just walking out of the storyline if she strayed too far from it might have simply been because, without a role, she was not bound by our rules. All the same, I knew that First Blood posed a risk to her. "I understand your reservations," I said. "But we have to deliver you to the Centennial. If I die at First Blood, and you are still crashing at my character's place, you might get written off because the story will no longer return to that house. You have to come with me." "I understand that. What I don't understand is how you can be so nonchalant about dying," she said. "Death is a bummer. I'd rather not do it," I said. "Is that better?" "Uh-huh," she said. "That's a very realistic emotional response to your impending doom." "Thanks, I've been working on it." I drove slowly that morning. I was not in any hurry to get to work. "Are you sure you're not an NPC?" she asked. "Maybe the twist is that you aren't real." I laughed. "Not much of a twist," I said. "I didn't do much back in my real life anyway. Might as well be a fake backstory." We drove in silence for a few blocks. Then she picked the conversation back up again. "What's it like?" I glanced at her. I could see dread on her face. "What's what like?" "My life before Carousel," I asked. She shook her head. "Death. Not as bad as nearly dying," I wanted to say. "Worse than just getting injured." I thought better of it. "The pain goes away, and I wake up in a theater watching my friends," I said. "Really, it kind of depends how I die." She chuckled. "Can't I put black eyeliner on you?" she asked. The casual talk about dying is something only guys in eyeliner did when I was growing up. I shook my head. I don't think I could pull it off. I can't even play guitar. "Bobby!" I screamed from across the lot. I had tried just talking loudly, but he was so concerned with his pack of dogs he didn't hear me. He had them all on leashes. The Carousel Atlas discussed how strong background tropes were for wallflowers. These tropes were more than casual details. They changed everything about how the wallflower was cast. In a way, this was limiting because Bobby could only be a veterinarian because of his background. The bright side was that he related like those dogs. It was dog tongue therapy and he responded to it well. Those dogs sure seemed to love him, too, the way they looked at him and followed his commands so eagerly. "There you are," he said. "I knew you were director, but you haven't been here all week while we were setting things up." "Everyone is spread to the wind," I said. "I haven't seen Antoine, Cassie, or Isaac in a month. Kimberly has been with me off and on. I have no idea where Dinah is. I haven't seen a trace of her." "This one is so exciting," he said. "Making a movie. I wonder if you'll actually get to direct Sumith," He stopped talking as he glanced over at Ramona. He darted his eyes at Ramona and then back at me as if saying, "Do you see the person behind you?" "This is Ramona Mercer," I said. "Ramona, this is Bobby Gill, resident wallflower and veterinarian." Bobby stuck out one of his hands to shake hers. It would have been more normal if he didn't have a handful of leashes. Ramona played along and shook his hand. "Mercer," he said. "Why does that name sound familiar?" Bobby wasn't around when we met some of the Mercers. I quickly gave him a backstory. Just the Cliff's Notes. "Wow," he said. "She's not on the red wallpaper except for that gold frame. She's not even on the script that I can see. That's spooky." "I'm what, spooky?" she asked. "Kinda, yeah. There was still a 50-50 shot that she was a Carousel infiltrator or something." "I can't wait for our scene," Bobby said. "We've been going over it for so long. I got my little stars all trained. They are naturals, you'll see." The fact that the dogs were controlled at least partially by the script mitigated how impressed I was, but still, they were adorable dogs. "Bobby, we need to talk," I said. "Anything you can say to me, you can say in front of the dogs," he said with a laugh. He must have been having a good week to be joking around. "I need to talk about Carlisle Geist," I said. "Oh," Bobby said. "I hear he's a real Scrooge." I shook my head. "No, he's not. The NPCs make stuff up. It's not true. He's a nice man." "I gotcha," he said. "He dies today, right?" "Yep," I said. "If he has to. I need you to keep an eye on the script. If he doesn't have to die for the true ending, tell me." Bobby seemed to be contemplating what I was saying. "Well, we know he dies today," Bobby said. "How can the manor party happen if—" "I know all that," I said. "I'm asking you to keep an eye on it. If there is any chance he doesn't have to die, you tell me. I don't care if you have to break character a little bit. Tell me." "Okay, Riley," he said. "It's just my trop doesn't give me good access to the script. Sometimes, choices fly by, and I miss things. The last time I was able to stare at that part of the script for hours before I had to make a choice. I don't know if I will be able to see it in time today." Bobby could see the script, but only a few lines at a time. Wallflowers had better tropes for script reading. He just had a beginner one. Still, I needed him to try. "Keep an eye on it," I said. "Please." "I will," he answered. I nodded. He nodded. We both knew I was hoping for too much. We were not heroes. This was not the kind of story with happy endings. "Kimberly," I said. "You ready for this?" "Born ready," she said. We were talking about the finale of our movie, but also about first blood of the storyline. It was that close. "Run through the beats," I said. Behind me, Carlisle Geist sat watching from his golf cart. We were in a part of the production lot called Dreary Street by the crew. It was a partial replica of a neighborhood built for the sole purpose of filming scenes like the one we were in. It was large, larger than any real-world production company would ever make. The houses were mostly hollow, and yards were purposefully littered with children's bicycles, lawn gnomes, water sprinklers, and every other bit of suburban decoration I could hope for to dress my movie. I got the odd urge to find some paintball guns when I looked around it. It would make a great place for that sort of thing. Carlisle needed his golf cart. Vacation had worn him out. Lots of hiking and swimming. I had to believe that was intentional. Carousel had sent him to get worn out. He couldn't be controlled. He could only be positioned in the right spot to die on cue. "I run through the alley," she said. "Then he tackles me, trips me up, stabs me in the leg. I reach up and open the gate so the dogs can get out and maul him while I limp away." "You got it," I said. "Now, let's take it from the top in slow motion." "I want to see it in the viewfinder before we start." I was interrupted by a loud crash behind me. I turned to see that one of the prop master's assistants had dropped a large tackle box or toolbox or something. All manner of prop knife fell out with a clatter on the floor. "Sorry," she said as they quickly picked up all of the knives. "The accidents were starting." The die-cast was coming. My character didn't know that, though. Kimberly and the stuntman playing the masked attacker went through their paces. I watched on the monitor and gave notes. I couldn't put it off any longer. It was time to move forward. Action! I yelled. Kimberly ran through a narrow alley between tall fences. She was scared and determined. As soon as she got to the end of the alley, she got in view of Bobby's dogs, who barked and snarled from behind a chain-link fence. She realized the dogs must have been barking at something. Just in time, she strafed to the right. The killer jumped out from an adjoining alley and missed his big tackle but tripped her. She kicked him in the face and looked up at the large dogs. She got an idea. If she could only reach the gate, she could be safe. She reached for it, but the killer lifted up a knife. Wait a second. Cut. I scream as urgently and loudly as I can. The action stopped. Everyone was looking at me. What's the matter? Carlisle said. That was perfect. Absolutely perfect. I got up from my director's chair and walked onto the set. Kimberly and the stuntman were still laying on the ground. I reached down to the knife the man was holding. I felt the cold metal, stuck my finger against the blade, and pressed. It's real. I screamed. Someone accidentally mixed up the prop knife with the real one. The crowd gasped. Are you serious? Carlisle screamed. He got up from his golf cart and made his way to where I was. I met him halfway. Quiet the dogs. Bobby commanded, hush, and they hushed. Carlisle took the knife and examined it. He put a hand on my arm to steady himself. Barney! He yelled. The prop master appeared as quickly as he could. How on the God's green earth did this happen? He asked more calmly than his face suggested he wanted to. I don't know, he said. I sent my assistant over with the knives. They were all in labeled sections. She dropped them earlier, I said. She must have gotten them mixed up. I just had this gut instinct. Thank goodness you did, Carlisle said. Maybe your grandmother isn't the only one with a gift. I had shared my background with him. The fact was, real knives did have a place on film sets, especially back in our era. Close-ups of knives would reveal a fake. Rubber knives wobble when moved. Retractable knives have a visible seam where the blade retracts. You needed real ones for some scenes. You just needed a protocol to keep them separated. Otherwise, you might just have an accident if you got unlucky. And I knew we were about to be very unlucky. Chapter 65. The cast and crew went about resetting to get the rest of the scene. I got close to Bobby in case he saw something on the script that might indicate Carlisle could survive the day. He didn't say anything on the subject. The dogs are worried about something, he said. I feel worried about something. It's the die-cast, I said, explaining its tropes in more detail. We had time to kill off-screen, so why not give him more information than I had previously? Gale Zaragoza. Bobby asked. Got it. Jason Voorhees with the powers of death in the Final Destination series. No big deal. Why would we worry? I had fallen behind in the references department. Glad Bobby was there to pick up the slack. I laughed. It is an aura. You'll take the full blast of it when it gets close, I said. After that, your grit might help mitigate it. The first hit is intense, though. I had seen that same aura trap before. It was the one the unknowable host had, but not nearly as powerful. Still, we were mere mortals. Gotcha, he said. The dogs must be extra sensitive. Oh, and Riley? Yeah. When things go wrong, I have to get the dogs out first, he said. I know, I said. Bobby's keeping his dogs around might have been an impediment, but this was not the time to have that conversation. I needed him alert. I work for the Geists, he said. I'm their personal vet for animals. They have all kinds. I had to manually check a horse for impaction. You know what that involves? Nope. Don't want to either, I said. He nodded and laughed. I didn't want to either. I handle animals for their movies, too, obviously. I know some things. Not a lot, but some things. I've been on their property all the way to where the manor is. I saw the asylum, too. Lots of screaming in there. Anything I need to know? I asked. He shook his head. Not now. We'll talk later. If we live, that is. That was a plan. On screen. All right, my friends, Carlyle said loudly. We have straightened out the knife issue and reset everything. Let's not have any more delays. He started clapping. Everyone else clapped, too. We all got back into positions. I was over behind the camera watching things on a little screen both in real life and on a red wallpaper, thanks to my director's monitor drop. I'm so sorry, Mr. Lawrence, the prop master's assistant said as she walked away with the real knife held out in front of her for extra safety. Safety, yeah, that was the reason. The dogs started barking. First blood was here. The moment that had been teased for so long was upon us. Action! I screamed. Because the story wouldn't move forward without it. Everything went into motion. We had already done the running scenes. We started back from when the cameras changed angle after Kimberly had been tripped. It was no use redoing everything. The killer reached out for her with the prop knife. Kimberly desperately reached for the gate with the barking dogs behind it. She trembled with a deep, palpable fear. Maybe that was her being good at acting. Maybe she trembled because she knew that the dogs weren't acting. They were terrified of something that approached from the west side of the building. I could feel the aura. Kimberly almost had the latch on the gate when the largest of Bobby's dogs, a wolfhound, threw itself against the gate, and the latch opened on its own from the hit. The dogs tore out of the opening all at once, and they didn't pretend to attack the stuntman wearing the killer's costume like they had been trained to. They bolted eastward. Bobby went screaming after them. Bobby! I yelled. My character would be screaming because my animal handler just messed up. I was screaming because I wanted to know what the script said. Bobby turned to me for a brief moment. He shook his head, then returned to tracking down his dogs. A black pit formed deep in my stomach. Carlyle was going to die. I knew not to get my hopes up. This wasn't drunk teenagers performing some hokey seance in an abandoned house while ghosts and ghouls tiptoed around. Carousel had a story to tell here. The dogs had torn out of the pen and past the crew so quickly that many had been startled. One assistant fell down. It was the prop master's assistant. She would never get back up. The knife she had been carrying so carefully had stuck in her chest. She was dead. The whole crew panicked at the sight, and many gathered around her, screaming for a medic. In the distance, a light fell from the ceiling of the large warehouse onto one of the fake houses that I would later learn was filled with boxes of costumes. Perfect kindling. The house ignited quickly. As the fire burned and smoke filled the air, the crew panicked to leave. Gail Zaragoza, the die-cast, was near. Riley. A voice called out. I recognized the voice immediately. It was Carlyle. I searched for him. He had run a distance toward the exit, but one of the crew had accidentally knocked him over, and he was struggling to get up. He looked back at me from the ground and asked for help. The crew member who had hit him was running off, looking back at him with a guilty glance. On screen, off screen, it didn't matter. Staying in character didn't matter. Carlyle didn't know the greedy director I was pretending to be hated him. He saw me as a friend. I ran to him. Let's go, I said. I helped him up and put his arm over my shoulder just as an explosion sounded off in the distance. It's happening again, Carlyle said. You have to run. Leave me. Wait a second, did he know what was going on? Carlyle, we have to get out of here, I said. No, you don't understand, replied, out of breath. The Geist family curse. I'll be fine. You need to leave. As a Geist, he had lived his whole life watching his friends and acquaintances befall terrible fates while he was unhurt. He must not have realized that this time, the terrible fate was his. Even so, I said. Let's go. I pulled them forward. As I did, the main lights in the warehouse went dark. I could only see by the lights of the fires that had grown around the set. I had to give Carousel credit. The setting had turned from a suburban paradise to a hellish maze in an instant. Riley. Kimberly screamed from somewhere in the distance. Smoke was building. I couldn't see in any direction for too far. Luckily, we were players and were able to see each other on the red wallpaper if we had a line of sight, even without good visibility. She ran to me. "Where is the exit?" she asked. I looked around. There was smoke and random suburban homes built to match all around. I was disoriented. Still, we hadn't moved that far. We could retrace our steps, but doing so would bring us back toward the diecast. "This way," I said. I started pulling Carlyle along as quickly as I could. I felt the dark aura of our pursuer. "Oh, my God!" Kimberly screamed. She must have felt it, too, and turned to look behind us. Because he was there, walking with a big stride. Carlyle saw him too and exclaimed something like, "Dear gods, it's here, isn't it?" The end. Gale Zaragoza. No emotion in his eyes. He was there to cause death, and nothing I could do would stop him. I knew I couldn't stop him. I hoped that Carousel would see me trying to save Carlyle and extend some proof that it approved, that it would warrant the story based on my improvisation. Could I convince Carousel to change the story to save him? There was no such luck. I would go on to tell myself that I got lost, that the smoke, chaos, and firelight had confused me so badly that I had taken a wrong turn. The truth was, I knew what I was doing. I was directing. I did my best to turn off my emotions and just get the shot Carousel wanted. Carlyle had to die. The street I took him down dead-ended at a row of fences. If Carousel were going to change its mind, it would have by the time we got to the fences. If it didn't, the fences provided us with a perfect setup to survive, even without Carlyle. I had no choice. We stumbled further until we saw the row of tall wooden fences. A dead end for at least one of us. Luckily, Kimberly and I could climb a fence. Hustle or adrenaline made it easy. I left Carlyle with Kimberly, and I jumped up, putting my feet against the fence so I could see over the other side. I saw a deck chair. I quickly pulled myself over the fence, grabbed the chair, and dragged it near the wall. I stood on it and reached over the top. "Kimberly," I said, "give me your hand." She did as I asked. I pulled her up with ease. The diecast was right there. I felt like throwing up. I had doomed Carlyle. It was one thing to know he had to die and another to help set it up. Kimberly was over. I reached back for Carlyle. If I timed it right, I wouldn't be able to save him. I hated that it came so easy for me to plan such a thing that way. He didn't reach for me. I probably wouldn't have had time to pull him over anyway. The diecast was upon us. Still, Carlyle said, "Run. Don't stay here for me." He turned back toward the large stalker. "Carlyle," I screamed. He thought he was saving me. That was the real gut punch. I set the whole thing up so he could die dramatically like Carousel wanted. His trying to save me made it all feel worse. So much worse. Instinctively, I pulled myself up and reached out for him. It was no use. He was too far away. Carousel did always have a sense of humor. Just as I pulled back from my useless attempt to grab Carlyle, the large wooden fence I was reaching over buckled from my weight. Talk about your bad luck. The whole thing, the entire fence panel, started to fall forward toward Carlyle and the diecast. I had thought the fence would be a dramatic barrier that would protect Kimberly and me while letting Carousel get what it wanted. Apparently, that wasn't enough. The fence fell forward. Carlyle wasn't fast enough to get out of the way. The top of the fence hit him in the upper back, and I wasn't able to get off the fence fast enough. I landed right on top of him with a crunch. 3 feet away, the diecast watched, uncaring. His job was nearly done. When the wooden fence panel and I had landed on Carlyle, something had broken. I could hear it. I scrambled away as fast as I could. I didn't mean to. I said instinctively. What I had intended was for the diecast to kill Carlyle as Carousel demanded while I watched helplessly from the other side of the fence. This was too much. I could still feel echoes of the disgusting crunch of Carlyle's ribs or spine on my hands. I felt it right through the fence. The diecast paid me no mind. He knelt down over Carlisle and picked up the man's head just long enough to make eye contact. That's when I saw that Carlisle's cane had been under him when he fell. The head of the cane had made contact with Carlisle's forehead and caused a sizable welt. Carlisle was out of it. He didn't look Gale in the eye. He was too injured. The killer grabbed the back of Carlisle's hair and then slammed his head back down on the cane with tremendous force. That was more than enough. Carlisle was well on his way to the grave just from me falling on him. Gale Zaragoza finished Carlisle off just like that. Carlisle's name became Carlisle Geist, deceased. Someone was pulling on my arm. It was Kimberly. I was so distracted watching Carlisle die that I barely noticed that the giant stalker was not turning around and leaving after his kill. He was looking for new targets. He was looking at us. Chapter 66. I didn't have time to mourn Carlisle. The diecast, far removed from its original purpose, was not sated by the death of the eldest Geist. It wanted more. Kimberly and I scrambled back over the fence toward the exit. The air was thick with smoke. The diecast followed. Its tropes held clues on how to beat it or at least how to survive a little longer. I knew it could outspeed us to a new shooting location. On that note, we were good. This whole place was likely one shooting location, if I were to guess. He wouldn't get a hustle boost as long as we were here. My strategy? Find a way to slow him down and then get far enough away for the scene to end and first blood to officially have passed. We would get a reprieve then, however minor. That was all well and good, but how would we stop this thing? He was bigger than me and built like a truck, and that wasn't even counting the metal parts. The bad luck aura was the real problem. Anything could fail. Anything could become a deadly weapon in its vicinity. Anything. A gun, a fence, a golf cart. I barely heard the whir of the electric golf cart as it whizzed through the artificial streets, dodging obstacles and building up speed. Bobby was at the helm. He must have gotten his dogs sorted out. As he got close to the diecast and it turned to see him, Bobby's eyes got wide, and he lost some of his conviction from the effects of the aura. Still, he put all his effort into keeping the gas pedal down, and then, with his last bit of bravery, he jumped from the seat. Interestingly, I had played around on an electric cart like the ones on the movie studio lot. Unlike their gas-powered cousins, they didn't really maintain speed when the accelerator was not compressed. I half expected the cart to slow down to a dull jog before it hit its target. It didn't. The cart slammed into the diecast and took him off his feet, pushing him away from us and into the wall of a nearby brick house, which crumbled. The crash was loud and filled the air with dust and debris. The diecast was covered in bricks, to the point that I could not see him. Bobby didn't have a great savvy stat. He had spent his stats elsewhere, so that wasn't why the golf cart plan worked. What Bobby did right was give Carousel something to work with. Gale Zaragoza had a trap that made his actions more cinematic and explosive, but as the golf cart began spewing white-hot molten globs as its battery burst, I realized that things like getting hit by a golf cart must have counted as an action. He had a weakness. Another point for the wallflower. Bobby was still recovering from his run-in with the concrete sidewalk he had rolled onto when he left the golf cart. I ran to help him up. "I was looking for Mr. Geist," he said as he got to his feet. "He's dead." Bobby nodded. "Yeah, I'm not surprised." "What is that thing?" "Oh, right, horror movie banter." He was a clueless side character. "A mistake," I said glumly. "That should help rehabilitate my character a bit. Admitting guilt is a great first step. The second step was surviving long enough for the audience to remember you." As Gale Zaragoza's undead body started throwing bricks, timber, and a golf cart off of himself, I realized that would be easier said than done. I expected Gale to roar or something. He didn't. He was silent as the grave. His mouth was basically welded shut, so that made sense. "Kimberly," I said. "Run. Get out of here." I tried helping Bobby forward. Only then did I realize he was hobbled from his fall. His kneecap stuck out funny. Our best shot was if Kimberly left. She was a main character, a truly innocent person who got wrapped up in all of this. If she were gone, there was a good chance we might go off-screen. An even better chance, thanks to my off-screen death ability. If I could just take this fight off-screen, I might have a chance at getting away. The enemy would still pursue me, but it would be different. I had learned that with the grotesques. They stopped being larger than life off-screen. There was no other way to explain it. I had to believe that was the way forward. We couldn't go off-screen, though, unless Kimberly left, if even then. Just leave us. I screamed. I was rehabilitating my character so well. It might have worked, too. Kimberly leaves, and I die off-screen. It could have worked out well. The diecast had other plans. He picked up the golf cart and threw it into a treehouse that was in a plaster tree near where Kimberly was standing. The crash was louder than a lightweight cart would merit. The fake tree wasn't held down by much, apparently, because it fell over, peeling up a fake grass as it did. Its treehouse broke apart and created a debris field of pallet boards and plywood from which Kimberly had to back away. The treehouse had Christmas lights as decorations. The power was out to the building, but those lights were lit when they became a tangled mess on the ground. They started sparking. This was too frustrating. It was almost as if this entire building was designed to make this chase fight scene as difficult as possible. Kimberly couldn't go over the debris field. That was surely a good way to get electrocuted. As it walked toward her, I leaned Bobby up against a stop sign and took off toward the diecast. I grabbed a brick from the wall that had fallen. It was rubber or foam of some kind. Of course, it was. This was a movie set. The realization that the falling bricks I had heard had been a real-life sound effect caused by the diecast cinematrop almost made me smile. Almost. I threw the foam brick at the diecast. It clanged off the creature's metal fixtures as if it were made of actual brick. The spirit of vengeance could target everyone. Anyone could die. Unlike most enemies, it didn't pick a target and kill it before moving on. It could pick any target. A player could defend his ally with nothing but bravery and a foam brick. Normally, you would need a trap to make an enemy truly target you on purpose. "It's my fault you're here," I said. I didn't think the curse was real. I don't know what I thought. I was just angry, and I did something unforgivable. Take me and leave her alone. To my surprise, the diecast paused. Was he considering my offer? Was Carousel? Carousel decided to pick a third option. A man stumbled toward the wreckage and said, "We have to get out of here. The whole place is going to burn." It was the stuntman playing the killer in our movie. He still wore his mask. His name was Tommy on the red wallpaper. I didn't even have time to tell him to run before the diecast turned to him, grabbed him by the arm, and threw him onto the pile of treehouse debris with the Christmas lights. Tommy, the stuntman, started to fry. Poor guy. Kimberly and I didn't waste any time getting away. We ran around the diecast and scooped up Bobby. He could move on his own, just not fast. We ran with him around the debris and toward the large exit in the distance. The diecast just walked over the sparking heap. He stood in front of the flaming wasteland that had once been a neat little fake neighborhood. He stood there posing so that when the others got inside, they could see him clearly. Antoine, Cassie, Isaac, and Ricky Zaragoza had come to save us. Ricky was in his usual emotional state. He yelped at the sight of his brother. Antoine ushered us to him. Kimberly almost went in for a hug, but Antoine had the presence of mind to remember that their characters didn't know each other. "You're safe now, this way," he said. She got the message. Isaac was dressed like he was going to swing by the Roxbury after we were done. He was hit by the oars so hard he might as well have run into clothesline. Cassie had taken her month-long break to dress her character in the least flamboyant clothing she owned, which was apparently a purple blazer and skirt combo that Whoopi Goldberg might have worn in the movie Ghost. They were all scared except for Antoine, who looked more wired than anything. Maybe angry at the undead thing that had just tried to hurt Kimberly. "Gail!" Antoine screamed as he rushed past Kimberly. "What have we done to you?" "I didn't know. I didn't know it would do this to you. I'm so sorry." The man who had once been Gail Zaragoza looked at Antoine. He had picked up a piece of lumber with roofing tin attached to the end. In his hands, it was a lethal weapon. Was there a glimmer of recognition there? I couldn't tell. I saw nothing in his eyes. Gail echoed throughout the warehouse. This time, it was Ricky Zaragoza who screamed it. He ran closer to his brother. "Oh, God, no. Not like this. Are you okay? Does it hurt?" Ricky, never completely without some illicit substance coursing through his veins, was sober at that moment. Tears flowed down his cheeks. "We were just trying to get revenge on them," Ricky said. "I can't believe this happened." "Gail, it's me, Ricky. Don't you know your own brother?" "If he did, he didn't show it." He walked closer to Ricky. "Your wife is still messed up about you," Ricky said. "You gotta remember." Look," he added, digging through his pockets. He pulled out a photograph that I was too far away from to see. "It's me and you and Dinah. Don't you remember Dinah?" "Dinah? Was she playing Gail Zaragoza's widow?" I had no way of knowing. Casting director didn't activate for reasons I couldn't understand at that moment. What could cause that? Her guarded personality trap might have been blocking it. Was that it? Ricky waited patiently in front of his brother, holding out the picture. Gail had been a head or more taller than Ricky in life. After he swung his gnarled board with a roofing tin blade, he was another head taller. Ricky's body fell to the ground as his shocked face rolled across the room. The picture took flight and landed 5 feet away from me. I grabbed at it. Gail Zaragoza was no longer there. All that was left was this undead murderous fiend. "We have to go," Cassie screamed. I wasn't one to argue. We all took off to the exit, a large bay door with a door that lowered with a pull chain. As the others ran, I saw the contraption ahead. "All at once!" I screamed. "We exit all at once." Maybe that was a little too inside baseball for my character, but I just knew that door was going to slide down and kill somebody if we ran under it one at a time. The others seemed to understand, and we more or less exited the door at the same time. It slid closed suddenly behind us with a force that would have killed anyone caught underneath. Ramona was sitting outside in my car. She had pulled it up near the door. She cursed as the door slammed shut. I realized that she planned to ram the diecast much as Bobby had done. "You didn't even kill it?" she screamed as I opened the driver's door and beckoned her to scoot over. "I am a film buff," I said sternly as I sat in the driver's seat. We needed to get out of there as fast as possible, faster than on foot. If the die-cast got too close, the car could simply malfunction. "Follow me," I screamed out the door at Antoine as he, Cassie, and Isaac loaded into the brown car that had belonged to the future mayor. I would have to ask about how they got it. I would have a lot of questions. I hadn't seen them in weeks. Ramona and Kimberly got in my car, though Kimberly only did so out of habit because her character didn't know Antoine. We had been off-screen since running out of the warehouse, but it could be hard to tell. Perhaps that was why the red wallpaper had an off-screen indicator instead of an on-screen one. They followed me. Antoine in the brown car, Bobby in a travel trailer filled with scared dogs. I looked at the picture Ricky had shown his undead brother. That was Dinah, all right. Why did I know nothing about her? Was she not in 1984 with us? Was she already dead? I couldn't figure it out. When we arrived back at my house, for lack of a better location, we found someone waiting for us there. She was much younger than I remembered her. It was Madame Celia. She looked upset. Chapter 67 The spirit of vengeance requires a delicate touch, Madame Celia said after we had gathered inside and settled in the downstairs living room. You were supposed to use its magic once and then return the flask. My sister tells me that you have sent it after half the town and now the flask is missing? I didn't say it was missing, Cassie said. The guy who had it said he ditched it, but I don't know. The conversation involved a little bit of backtracking. I got the feeling Carousel was just using it to provide editing options to help tell the story. Madame Celia was apparently Cassie's sister in this story. She was also an NPC, not a player, so there were no meta chats. There were plenty of lore chats, though. The spirit takes on the essence of that sin it avenges, she said. It chokes drowners with a watery grave, arsonists with ashes, and all manner of evil with evil in kind. We let that realization wash over us. We kind of figured that, but it was good for our characters to understand. Gale Zaragoza died in a supposed accident, I said. Hence the bad luck wafting every which way. Isaac cursed. What do we do? Cassie said. If the spirit grows too strong, then the town is doomed. Not just the guys. Everyone. That is not our concern, sister, Celia said. We will be moving on. If what you say is true, then we have no further business here. Madame Celia was playing a shady evil psychic in this story, but she still stood with the poise and elegance she always had. She was not much of an actor. I could tell she felt it was beneath her. Cassie and Celia bickered for a while longer until Celia said, the spirit needs a host. As long as it has one, it will only grow in power until it has completed its duty. How do we take away its host? I asked. Can its body be killed? Celia paused and then said, it will maintain authority over its host regardless of your actions. None of you have a better claim to the host than it does. There was a brief pause of confusion. You never told me about this. Who could have a claim to the host? Cassie asked. We were suddenly off screen. That was odd. Premature. Something else must have happened to take attention away from us. Normally, we would just wait for our turn again, but then Celia picked up her bags and started to leave. She couldn't speak out of character. Even off-screen, she was limited. She turned to Kasia and then to each of us. She rested on Ramona, who had sat cross-armed in a chair for the entire scene, perplexed. Venture forth. Tiny victories. Tiny defeats. That is the way. Do not lose heart. Then she left. Tilde. When the door closed, Isaac said, wait, is that the lady who writes the fortunes for the fortune cookies? I need her autograph. Cassie shoved him. Be serious. Things are going pretty well, aren't they? Kimberly asked. She moved next to Antoine. They had not seen each other in weeks, though Antoine had reportedly been taken off the board for much of that time. He was really starting to withdraw inward, but he definitely perked up now that Kimberly was back around. No one had seen Dinah. The photo of her with pre-die-cast Gale Zaragoza was the only clue we had that she existed. Cassie didn't even have her vitals on the red wallpaper. She was in the wind. Bobby was in the kitchen looking through my shelves and fridge for food. There was a ton of it. I've been parking out on a farmer's land out east, Bobby said. His wife makes me fresh-cooked meals, and they have a fenced-in place for the dogs. I just woke up there and never left. Still, I can't say I'm not jealous of what you've got going on here. He eyeballed the pseudo-modernist glass house my character lived in. Thanks, I said. Now that someone had commented on it, everyone piled on. Oh my God, Riley, this place is so tacky, Kimberly laughed. It was hard to argue when she and Antoine were sitting in a chair that was shaped like a giant red hand. Yeah, well, it's home, I said as I scooped some tortilla chips into a bowl and started making nachos. We shared our accounts of the places we had been staying. Ramona and I were in the glass house my tool of a character had designed, likely with his eyes closed. Antoine slept in a spare room of a halfway house, and the woman who owned the place provided meals. There are multiple unmarked graves in the back, he said. There are spots where the grass grows greener, and the landlady always has a creepy smile. He concluded that she belonged to a horror story of her own and was just filling in for this one. Between that and seeing my daughter every other weekend, I've had work at a mill a couple of days, but mostly, I just jumped forward weeks at a time. He wasn't under the scrutiny of a Geist. He didn't need to be around all the time like I did. We all knew Carousel could put us in stasis or whatever it did. It had demonstrated that power multiple times. It had never done so to this extent, however. Cassie slept in a travel trailer with her sister. They were fly-by-night psychics who sold magic elixirs and palm readings. Of course, if you asked correctly, they sold more than that. She used magic to make a man break up with his fiancée, Cassie said. It was a whole ordeal. The first thing we did in the story. I guess we aren't nice little witches. Carousel really has your number, huh? Isaac said. He got punched. Kimberly had a loft in the entertainment district with a tab at the bar downstairs paid for by Geist Productions. She wanted for nothing except Antoine. She could even plunder the costume department for clothes. She was happier than she had ever been. I couldn't blame her. I would have taken clothes too if I had thought of it. Most of the month had been uneventful if it happened at all. Except one thing. Future Mayor Roderick Gray. He had been in and out of Antoine, Cassie, and Isaac's stories. Acted funny, Cassie said. Asked Celia about the flask, weird questions. He said he threw it away. He was lying. I didn't need Moxie to tell me that. Said he was worried someone else might find it and use it. He wondered if that was something to worry about. Celia brushed him off. Isaac and Antoine reported similar encounters. He didn't talk to me, I said. Wasn't I a part of the cabal? Maybe he saw the house and thought better than to come, Isaac said. They were just jealous. You're just jealous, I said. Wait, Antoine said. Where have you been staying, Isaac? Isaac had fixed himself a plate of nachos and salsa dip. He sat on the long fainting couch with a great big grin and started telling his tale. I've been crashing in a furniture store, Isaac chuckled. They've got snacks in the vending machine that I've been munching on. I guess I have Bobby's food truck to thank for that. Cassie laughed. You've been eating like cheese puffs and beef jerky or what? No. Wrapped subs and tuna and crackers. Fresh cut fruit snacks. Cobb salad. This place has ridiculous snacks. It's one of those machines with revolving plates, and you pick a plate, and it spins to your selection and opens up. How has that been free? Ant-Man asked. Doesn't a vending machine cost money? We had no money anymore. Nope, Isaac said. It's broken. Customers have to ask us to unlock it, and then they pay at the register. All I have to do is write down what I take and pay the guy that fills it right from the till. Wait, do you work at this furniture store? I asked. Yep. He started to laugh. You've been stealing from your character's job? Ant-Man asked. Isaac smiled and shook his head. Nah, I own the place. Right, Ant-Man said. Your character's family is rich. Isaac shoved a chip loaded with salsa into his mouth and said, yeah, well, no. They were. I started out living in this big house in a nice part of town about a month ago. Then, I got evicted by the sheriff, who is like a level 30 NPC, by the way. You got evicted? Ant-Man asked. They threw me out of the house like 2 days after the factory fire. On screen and everything. I laughed at Isaac's misfortune, but everyone did. So, how'd you get to the furniture store? Ant-Man asked. Carousel sent me on this ghost hunt looking for a place to stay. I had an address book. Is that what it's called? He grabbed a small black book from his pocket. It listed everyone I know, but all the names except for 3 were crossed out, so I just started going down them one by one. The first one was an ex-girlfriend who was dating an accountant. Not interested in me anymore. Because she wised up, Cassie said. 'Cause she was a gold digger, Isaac corrected. Then my uncle, who just blamed me for the family money troubles and got madder and madder at me every time I asked about what happened because I never got the full story. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. Had to leave so he didn't throttle me. I think he embezzled money from the company, but I didn't pull that thread because it was late, and I was tired. Then the furniture store. Ant-Man asked. Then the furniture store, Isaac said. It was the last property my character owned. I had a key to the back door. I unlocked the back, went in, and slept on a giant bed. Was this on screen? I asked. Enough of it was, Isaac confirmed. He ate another chip. I figure Carousel is trying to make me look pitiable. Did you wake up with shoppers working around? Kimberly asked. Isaac laughed. Yep. I swear, the place was closed down when I crawled in there. Windows were boarded up. Dust everywhere. Then I woke up. The guy there says, "Hey boss, didn't see you there," and I thought he meant boss as in buddy or pal or sir, but was really calling me boss. I owned the place. I wake up and there are customers browsing around the store. So I put my pants on. "Oh no," Cassie said with a chuckle. So I put my pants on, and the guy, my employee, an NPC named Earl, says that my character had fired the sales staff, and now it's my job to sell the furniture, Isaac said. "Is that what you've been doing between scenes?" I asked. "You've been selling furniture?" "Yeah," he said. "It's easy, too, because my moxie beats their moxie. Piece of cake." Isaac's story was funny, and just about everyone laughed, everyone except Ramona, of course. She was genuinely disturbed by the tale. It made sense. Carousel as a vengeful, evil hell was something you could wrap your head around. Carousel, purveyor of petty torments, was something else, something even harder to understand. "Okay," Ant-Man said. "So why were you running when I saw you?" "Cops," Isaac said. "What did you do?" Cassie asked. "I punched a guy. He wouldn't leave me alone. Kept hounding me for money. He was a creditor. Called himself that constantly. Followed me day and night. Watched me in the furniture store. Wouldn't leave me alone. In front of customers." I asked, acting appalled. "Yeah," Isaac admitted. "He got more and more aggressive until, eventually, I punched him. I tried smooth-talking him, but he was level 10, and it all must have been in moxie or savvy or something because I could not convince him to leave me alone. I punched him and knocked him out in one hit." "He definitely didn't have any grit if you knocked him out," Ant-Man said. "Must not have," Isaac said solemnly. A woman nearby called the police. "Now, there's a cop posted up outside the store. They've been looking for me for days. Haven't gotten any sleep. I have no idea what's happening." And there it was. The funny story of an ne'er-do-well down on his luck became part of the plot of a horror story. "Jail?" Cassie exclaimed. "I saw a silhouette of someone hanging behind jail bars. I've been seeing so many premonitions. Dozens every day. I'm not sure if it's in my head or what." That made some sense. Cassie could see premonitions of death, but the diecast was not bound to kill any particular character. Her premonitions changing rapidly was understandable. So jail was Carousel's plan, apparently. Put Isaac in jail, where he was a sitting duck. The diecast wouldn't even have to get to him. Just get close enough for Isaac to die of bad luck. "What do we do?" Cassie asked. I closed my eyes while I thought things through. When I opened them again, everyone else was looking at me again. "So we know what Carousel's plans are, or at least one of the scenes it's setting up," I said. "Rebirth. The moment we learn that future Mayor Roderick Gray has used the flask thing to target us." "You said he was acting weird." "Suspicious," Ant-Man said. "Yeah. As you might expect, he's turning on us. Thinks we might rat him out. The cops did get there too quickly with the factory fire. He's going to get paranoid. When he sees Isaac go to jail, that's going to be the moment that pushes him over the edge because he thinks you'll talk for a reduced sentence. He sends the diecast after you. We learn that we are now being hunted. I'm sure he'll find a way to tie Kimberly and Bobby in with it somehow. Just wait." I couldn't know for sure, but it was my best guess. I had heard their descriptions of his behavior. Gray was a liability, and he saw all of us as liabilities, too. "I can't die in jail," Isaac said. At first, I thought he was telling a joke, but he was serious. "I can't deal with that. Trapped, nowhere to run." The jovial storyteller from moments ago was gone. He was suddenly facing his own mortality again. "We may not want to prevent it completely," I said. "Carousel will just change plans," Kimberly said. "Or escalate the danger." I nodded. Adeline had drilled that part into our heads during our stay at Dyer's Lodge. Carousel was the type of place where you could win a battle and lose a war. "So, sacrifice me?" Isaac said. I put my hands up. "No," I said. "This isn't second blood. No one has to die. Or at least none of us do. I relayed to them my experience with the die-cast and the straight razor. I whipped the blade out of my pocket. Carousel set me up with a kind of test. I could see the killer's tropes, but I might die if I wasn't careful. This is similar. We need the revelation that Gray has turned on us, that he is the guy pulling the strings. It's so much easier to beat a person. If that is never revealed, we will have a much harder time winning. The die-cast was a really tough customer. The guy holding the flask, not so much. So we just killed him? Isaac asked. He's not even an enemy. He's a level 3 NPC. I could kill him. That was an option. Carousel did make him an NPC instead of a proper enemy. That's a trap, I said. We would kill him, and then Carousel would make the die-cast himself even more dangerous somehow. We need Gray to be pulling the strings. We can win under those circumstances. Plus, that is probably necessary to get the true ending. I don't want to die, Isaac said. He was having a minor freakout, but I didn't blame him. Well, then, we're just going to have to take special care of you, I said. Then, the planning began. Tope continued. Thanks for listening.